And me, along with my HOD, Dr. Rajesh Kumar Kanojia, we are doing pediatric orthopedics work mostly. And all the X-rays that I'm showing you in these presentations are the work of Dr. Rajesh Kumar Kanojia only. So now come to the topic. Sacral septic arteries of the hip, it is a common disorder, and postgraduates are very much likely to get a long case of this entity. So in sacral septic arthritis hip, as you know that septic arthritis is an emergency. Just hold it, slide is not moving.
Just click on the slide.
Double click on the slide, Dr. Sumit. Double click once.
Left lower corner, there is arrow also. Just below the logo of LHMC.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that septic arthritis is an emergency. So a delay in diagnosis of septic arthritis can lead to damage to the hip joint. And damage to the hip joint is mainly because of bacterial toxins and the breakdown product of WBC. So what happens if there is damage to the various hip structures? These damage can lead to sequelae of the septic arthritis. So what are the various structures that can be damaged? First, there can be damage to the growth plate. So damage to the growth plate can lead to limb length discrepancy. This limb length discrepancy will be more if there is damage to the both proximal as well as the distal femoral physis or distal femoral growth. So whenever you see a patient, the limb length discrepancy is more. So always think that there might be involvement of knee joint also. Apart from this, there can be premature or asymmetric closure of the proximal femoral epiphysis, which can lead to various head abnormalities like coxa brava. Coxa brava means small head. There can be coxa vara, coxa valga, or version deformities. Apart from this, if the infective process has damaged the neck of the femur or in metaphyseal region, so it can lead to pathological fractures. And because the infective process, sometimes this pathological fracture doesn't heal and ultimately lead to pseudoarthrosis of the femoral neck. Apart from this, sometimes the infective process can also involve the acetabular side. As you can see in this X-ray, this is the 4-year-old child, and there is, because of the infective process has damaged the acetabular side, there is premature closure of the triradiate cartilage. You can see both of the triradiate cartilage has been fused, which are usually open, as this is the normal X-ray, and this is the fused triradiate cartilage. And because of the fusion of these triradiate cartilage, there can be acetabular dysplasia, and this dysplasia can contribute to dislocation or subluxation of the hip joint. And in the severe form of the sequelae, sometimes whole of the proximal femur, including the epiphysis, metaphysis, and the neck, has been completely destroyed, leading to the various severe form of the instability. This is also a type of sequelae. Now, question arises: when will you label as a case of sequelae septic arthritis of the hip joint? To understand this, I am just showing you an example. This patient developed infection in 2008. She was diagnosed with septic arthritis of the left side. She was managed with arthrotomy with somewhere else. And after 6 weeks of arthrotomy, she came to us with this picture, where you can see there is osteomyelitic changes and there was a pathological fracture of the proximal femur. So she was managed in our institute. She was regularly followed in our institute. And after 2 years, this was the clinical picture. In this clinical picture, you can easily understand that neck has been completely destroyed. There is osteomyelitic changes in the proximal femur and there is sequestrum, and the proximal femur is irregular. So this sequelae will be labeled as a pseudoarthrosis. So to label a sequelae, it needs a long period of interval, roughly 2 to 3 years. These sequelae of the septic arthritis usually not labeled in the early phase of the infections, roughly at the age of 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It requires a regular follow-up, and at the age of after 2 to 3 years of infections, these are labeled as a sequelae. Now, the sequelae of the septic arthritis, postgraduates are very likely to get a long case. And in all these patients, the presenting complaint will be only limb. This will be the only presenting complaint. Otherwise, there will not be any presenting complaint. So the most important thing is the past history. You have to elicit a past history. So whenever you are suspecting that the patient was having infection, a past history is must, and this past history has to be elicited by both the parents. And the past history, what are the important past history? A birth history of prematurity may suspect that patient might be having infection. A past history in the infancy in difficulty in feeding or frequent crying, or inability to move the affected limb, or prolonged stay to the hospital like neonatal ICU, or hospital stay because of severe pneumonia or sepsis, a aspiration of the joint, and massage of the extremity. If these past history is present and your presenting complaint, the patient presenting complaint is just limp, then you can suspect that patient might be having an infective etiology. So after the history, you have to examine the hip joint by the standard method. And in the standard method, the first you have to look at the gait. Now look at the gait of this child. So in the gait, is it visible or not?
No.
In the gait, you will see that the patient is having just very mild nudge on the right side, and there is no severe gait abnormality. But on the radiograph, you will see the appearance of proximal femur is not normal, because this patient was having retroversion of the femoral head. Similarly, just see the gait of the other child.
We are not able to see the videos.
Just wait a second. Still not visible?
No. No.
Okay. Just hold a second.
You can proceed, no problem. You can.
Okay. Just let me try once.
Do you have the video file on your PC?
Just hold a second. Yes, I have.
Then you can play it directly. That's actually sometimes.
Okay.
You stop sharing the screen and go
Yeah.
for that. And again, by sharing the screen, you can go for the direct videos.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, else you can complete the talk and at the end open that file
Okay,
and show
okay.
show all the videos.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Right.
Let me complete it.
Right, sir.
Yes, slide is visible or not?
Slide is visible.
Yeah, okay, sir. So sometimes you might have just a mild gait abnormality, and sometimes just let me check the slide again. There is some problem.
Slide is changed.
Okay, the gate video is not running. I don't know what is the problem. I will show you it again. So once you have examined the gate, what is the I message tell you that in gate abnormality can be very mild or it can be very severe in sequelae septic arthritis of the patient. But after the gate examination, you have to examine the attitude of the patient. The attitude can be either external rotation or internal rotation deformity, and there can be severe shortening. So once you have examined the gait and attitude of the patient, the next thing that you have to check is on inspections. On inspection has to be done from the front, from the side, and from the back. Apart from the normal findings like position of the ASIS, position of the spine, as well as wasting of the muscles, the important thing which is important if you are suspecting an infective etiology is the scar. As you can see, In this patient, there is a scar on the anterior surface which is suggestive of previous arthrotomy. As you can see in this picture, there is a scar which is suggestive of INT, which was done in proximal thigh. The muscles are bulging and the thigh is very short. And similarly, you can see a scar in the proximal thigh in this patient, but the pathology was in the hip joint. As you know, that infection of the hip joint as well as osteomyelitis of the proximal femur, they usually coexist. So inspection of the hip as well as proximal femur is very important. After inspection, you have to go for palpation. In palpation, you have to do the normal palpatory findings like temperature and the local tenderness. Apart from the other thing which is very important in palpation is the 3-digit spine triangle, because this is commonly disturbed in sequelae of the septic arthritis patient. Other thing is you have to palpate the proximal thigh, because osteomyelitis of the proximal femur and the septic arteries of the hip joint, they usually coexist, and you might see some irregularity in the proximal thigh. And sometimes there can be a malunited fracture of the proximal femur because of osteomyelitic changes. So the inspection of the proximal thigh is very important if you are suspecting a case of septic arthritis sequelae. Now, after the palpation, you have to examine the deformities. Deformities has to be examined by the standard method. You have to examine for the flexion deformities, and in most of the cases, flexion deformities present. Then you have to check the position of the ASIS. Then you have to examine the abduction or adduction deformity. And lastly, you have to assess the range of motion. Range of motion in these sequelae can be either exaggerated or it can be limited. Both type of range of motion can be there. After this range of motion, you have to check the limb length. Limb length is very important in the sequelae septic arthritis because multiple physeal involvement or multiple joint involvement is very common in infancy septic arthritis. As in this child, you can see there is involvement of the knee joint. As you can see, the Galeazzi test is positive, and there is varus deformity in the knee also. Similarly, in this child, you can see the infective process had involved in the hip joint as well as the knee joint, because the physis of the knee is also fused and there is severe shortening and the patient is standing on the equinus. So limb length discrepancy, more specifically segmental length. Segmental length means length of the femur and the length of the tibia. It has to be checked separately in these patients. After the measurement, the test of instability like a Tenderbuck test and telescopic test has to be done, as these tests tells about the stability of the hip joint. So once your examination of the hip joint is over, as I already told you that involvement of other joint is very common. It can be seen up to 10 to 30% of the cases. If the infective process has occurred in infancy, multiple joint involvement is very common. So examination of other hip as well as ipsilaterally is must. You have to examine the other hip joint as well as the ipsilaterally. Apart from this, a brief survey of elbow and the shoulder and the other joints has to be done, because multiple joint involvement in septic arthritis in infancy is very common. And in some patients, involvement of temporomandibular joint can also be there. So mouth opening has to be checked. As you can see in this picture, this patient is having septic involvement of the shoulder, and this patient is having septic involvement of the elbow, and there is flexion deformity of the elbow. In both of these patients, there was septic arthritis of hip joint also. There was another patient, the X-ray is showing involvement of the septic process on the bilateral hip joint. So examination of the other joint is very important. And apart from this, you can see in this child, the mouth opening has been reduced as there was involvement of bilateral temporomandibular joint, and this child was having abnormal dentitions of the lower jaw. So once your examination is over, including the hip joint and the various other joints, you are expected to take a diagnosis that my patient with this much of age group is having this much of deformity, with this much of shortening, and this much of limb length discrepancy, or with or without any neurological deficit, and test of instability if present, whether it is present or absent. And on the past history and the history of other examination, if you are suspecting that he is having infective etiology, then you can label it as a septic arthritis sequelae. You are not expected to tell a classification of septic arthritis after clinical examination, because on clinical examination, nobody is going to ask about the classification. Classification of these sequelae is based upon the radiological. So what are the radiology that you require to classify these sequelae? Most of these sequelae can be easily classified by just on radiograph, but in some cases you might need arthrogram, or in very rarely you might need CT scan to classify these sequelae. So how to classify these sequelae? There are two classifications which are commonly given in literature. One is Hanka's classification. Hanka classified these sequelae is 1982, and another is the Choi classification. He classified these sequelae in 1990. Out of these two, the Choi classification is commonly asked in your exam. You might get a short note on Choi classification, or sometimes examiner may also ask about the Choi classification in your long case. So what is Choi classification? I have written it down what is the salient feature of this classification. The first salient feature is Choi classified his sequelae when the disease process occurs in early infancy, that is in less than 1 year of age. Remember this? According to Choi, the classification was based upon when the initial infection occurs in less than 1 year of age. He told that a minimum follow-up 3 is required to classify these sequelae. He classified into 4 groups, which were further divided into 8 subgroups. Classification was basically based upon the nature and extent of injury to the various hip structures. And classification was a radiologic appearance at final follow-up or at skeletal maturity. And the main aim of this classification was to develop appropriate treatment guidelines for these sequelae. In this picture, you can see this is the Hanka's classification and this is the Choi classification. In Choi classification, you can see these are the 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each group has been further divided into 2 subgroups, A and B. By looking at this picture, it looks a very complicated classification. So I will try to simplify this classification by giving you an example of each and every sequelae. Now come to the Choi type 1. What is Choi type 1? According to Choi, the Choi type 1 hips were the hips who were treated early during the infancy when they were diagnosed by septic arthritis, and the outcome of this treatment was almost normal hip. So in Choi type 1A, it was a completely normal hip, and in Choi type 1B, there was a slight coxa magna after the follow-up. This coxa magna occurs because of reactive hyperemia, and when the head diameter is roughly 15% more than the opposite side, you can label it as a coxa magna. Clinically, these hips have almost complete range of motion and the outcome was satisfactory, and these patients usually doesn't have any problem. As you can see, this patient developed infection in year 2000 on the left hip. You can see in the left side, there is some infective pathologies there. He was treated with arthrotomy, and after 9 years of follow-up, radiological appearance, you can see the head diameter on this side is relatively higher as compared to this side, and it is approximately 20% higher. So you can label it as a coxa magna roughly after 9 years of follow-up. Clinically, this patient doesn't have any problem. The outcome was excellent. As this patient has very limited clinical findings, you are very likely to get these sequelae in your exam. So it is better to avoid diagnosis of type 1B, as these patients will not be kept in your exam because of very limited clinical findings. Now, what is Choi type 2? In Choi type 2, Choi classified this sequelae, there is infective involvement at the level of either epiphyseal, physeal, or metaphyseal level. So if the Choi type 2A is coxa brava, it occurs because of involvement of epiphyseal level when there is symmetrical closure of the femoral physis. Choi type 2B is coxa vera or coxa valga when there is asymmetrical closure of the femoral physis. These patients usually present with limp. There will be mild to moderate limb length discrepancy. Coronal plane movement may be affected, and Trendelenburg test is usually positive in these patients. Now look at this X-ray. This is the example of coxa brava. Coxa brava means head has been small as compared to the opposite side. You can see this head is very small as compared to this side because there is symmetrical closure of the femoral physis. Because of the symmetrical closure, the greater trochanter is proximally migrated. Okay, so in these patients, the 3-digit branch angle will be reversed and there is symmetrical closure of the femoral physis. Now look at this example. This patient developed infection on the right side, and roughly after 14 years of follow-up, you can see the greater trochanter has been proximally migrated more severely and the next shaft angle has been reduced, and you can label it as a coxa vera. Why coxa vara developed? Because the medial femoral physis has growth arrest and later continued for some times. That is why this patient is having coxa vara. In these patients, there will be significant shortening. There will be limitation of abduction. There can be Trendelenburg gait, and there is reversal of Bryant's triangle. Now you can see this is the example of coxa valga. This coxa valga deformity occurs when there is lateral physeal closure and the medial continued to growth. These patients usually have very mild symptoms, and this deformity as an isolated sequelae is very rarely seen. Now come to Choi type 3A and Choi type 3B. According to Choi type 3A and Choi type 3B sequelae occurs because of malalignment of the proximal physeal and the metaphyseal junction. What happens in Choi type 3A? There is either anteversion or retroversion. This anteversion and retroversion basically depends upon the site of the slipping of the femoral physis. If the femoral physis has slipped anteriorly, it can lead to anteversion deformity. If the physis has been slipped posteriorly, it can lead to retroversion deformity. These anteversion and retroversion deformities are usually associated with either coxa vara or coxa valga because isolated anteversion and retroversion is very rarely seen. Second thing is Choi type 3B. In Choi type 3B, there is pseudoarthrosis. This pathology occurs when there is involvement of the neck of the femur because of infection. When there is a lysis of the neck of the femur because of infection, there can be pathological fracture, which ultimately lead to pseudoarthrosis. Now look at this X-ray. This is the example of Choi type 3A. In Choi type 3A, there is either anteversion or retroversion. In the radiograph, AP radiograph, you can see the appearance of femoral physis or proximal femur on the right side is different from the left side because there was a retroversion on the right side, which was confirmed on CT scan. On CT scan, you can see on this side, the head of the femur is more posterior as compared to this side because of retroversion. If the retroversion or anteversion is very severe, then these patients may present with abnormally rotated extremity and lurch. Now in Choi type 3B, I already told you that Choi type 3B occurs when the infective process occurs in the neck of the femur, which leads to fracture neck of the femur, which is very difficult to heal because of infection and ultimately lead to pseudoarthrosis. So if the resorption of the neck is small, it will lead to narrow gap pseudoarthrosis. And if the complete neck has been resolved, it can lead to wide gap pseudoarthrosis. You can see in this picture, it is wide gap pseudoarthrosis and it is narrow gap pseudoarthrosis. When there is wide gap pseudoarthrosis, Trendelenburg test and telescopy will be more frank as compared to the narrow gap. Now what is Choi type 4? In Choi type 4, there is complete destruction of femoral head and femoral neck. It can be classified into two types, Choi type 4A and Choi type 4B. In 4A, the remnant of the neck in the acetabulum is present, which can be seen by arthrography. And in Choi type 4B, there is complete loss of femoral head and femoral neck. These patients usually present with severe limb length discrepancy, and there is more severe proximal migration of the greater trochanter. These are the examples of Choi type 4A. This is the example of Choi type 4B. Here you can see a small amount of the neck is present in the acetabulum, which was confirmed on arthrogram, which can be confirmed on arthrogram. And here you can see there is complete loss of the head and the neck, and the greater trochanter is more proximal migration as compared to this side, as well as from the previously described entities. Okay, so now come to, as I already told you, that this classification is basically radiological. You cannot classify this after the clinical examination, but in clinical examination, you can check whether the patient is having telescopy or not. So if telescopy is present, then it is most likely an unstable hip. And if the telescopy is absent, then it is most likely a stable hip. So when the telescopy is present, so it can be either Choi type 3B, that is wide gap pseudoarthrosis, or it can be Choi type 4, or if telescopy is absent, you can suspect that it can be either Choi type 1, Choi type 2, or Choi type 3B, narrow gap pseudoarthrosis. There is one more entity, that is dislocation of the hip, which can occur because of septic arthritis sequelae, but this entity is not classified by the Choi. So if the telescopy is present, you can always keep this differential diagnosis, that is dislocation of the hip because of the infective process. So remember this, if the test of instability is present, it can be either Choi type 3B, Choi type 4 or dislocation hip. Or if telescopy is absent, then you can say that it can be either Choi type 2 or Choi type 3B narrow gap pseudoarthrosis. So this is the summary of the all clinical features. Gait abnormalities are more in Choi type 4 as compared to Choi type 1. Shortening will be more if there is involvement of other epiphyses, other physeal involvement, or in Choi type 4B because of more severe proximal migration of proximal femur. Deformities can be either fixed flexion deformity, external rotation deformity, or internal rotation deformity. Test for instability, that is telescopy, will be present in Choi type 4, Choi type 3 wide gap pseudoarthrosis, and in septic dislocation of the hip joint. Range of motions can be reduced or exaggerated. Pain, remember this, pain is not a feature of the sequelae, or if it is a feature, it is a very late feature. Remember this, pain is usually not a feature of the septic arthritis sequelae. Now in Choi classifications, there are certain types of sequelae which cannot be classified. First, I have already told you that is dislocation of the hip joint. This dislocation of the hip joint because of the septic process is a very known entity, but it has not been classified in the Choi. Similarly, as I told you that Choi classified his sequelae when the infective process occurs in infancy, that is in less than 1 year of age. But in our India, in our country, sometimes infection of the hip joint can occur in adolescence age group, and this can lead to bilateral ankylosis causing the severe flexion deformity. So you should always keep this entity in mind if the patient is having ankylosis. Apart from this, sometimes there can be complete resorption of the proximal femur. As you can see, the femur has been completely resorbed, and there is involvement of the hip joint also. These types of sequelae can also be not classified by the Choi classification. Now come to the management. In management, you have to remember the basic principles of the management. The basic aim of the treatment is to improve the function and biomechanics of the hip joint. The surgical procedures in the childhood are temporary in nature, and the main aim of these procedures is to increase the bone stock so that the further reconstructive procedures like total hip replacement can be easily done. And in most of the patients, multiple surgeries are required to achieve a good outcome. As I have already told that Choi type 1 sequelae are almost a normal hip, so treatment is not required in Choi type 1. In Choi type 2, because of involvement of the femoral physis, there can be either coxa breva, coxa vera, or coxa belga. So the aim of this sequelae is to prevent the further subluxation of the hip joint. To prevent the further subluxation of the hip joint, you can do corrective osteotomy either at the femoral side or at the acetabular side. So osteotomy at the femoral side can be done by angular correction, or from the acetabular side can be done by the pelvic osteotomies. Sometimes because of severe coxa vera, there can be proximal migration of greater trochanter, and it can lead to abductor insufficiency. So to improve abductor functions, we can do trochanteric epiphysiodesis or distal transfer of trochanter. Trochanteric epiphysiodesis is usually done when the trochanteric physis is open and a good amount of growth potential is there. And distal transfer of trochanter is done when the trochanteric physis has been completely fused, then you can transfer the distal trochanter to the distal site. And in some cases, neck lengthening procedure has to be done, which is known as Wagner's double intertrochanteric osteotomy. I'm just showing you an example of all these procedures. You can see in this patient, there is coxa vera and there is some subluxation of the hip joint. To correct the coxa vera, we have done the valgus osteotomy, and because of valgus osteotomy, the hip might further subluxate. It was supplemented by the pelvic osteotomy. Here you can say the neck is very small because of septic process. So this was treated by a neck lengthening procedure, which is known as Wagner's double subtrochanteric osteotomy. And you can see this is the follow-up. Neck length has been achieved. Now come to the Choi type 3. In Choi type 3A, as I told you that there is version abnormality, either anteversion or retroversion, which may be associated with either coxa vera or coxa belga. To correct this abnormality, we have to do the femoral osteotomy. As you can see, the femoral physis is not normal on the right side as compared to the left side. Because this patient was having retroversion of the femur, this was treated by the double osteotomy, osteotomy of the proximal femur, and the head appearance has become good and the angle has been almost normal. Now in Choi type 3B, which is known as pseudoarthrosis, this treatment of this entity is a bit difficult. This was the largest series which was done by us. And the treatment described is the valgus osteotomy and the fibula graft. To achieve union at the pseudoarthrosis size, every effort should be made to achieve union, and in most of the cases, multiple surgery is required. Just see this example. This patient was having large gap pseudoarthrosis. In first surgery, fibula grafting was done, and in second surgery, the valgus osteotomy was done, and this is the post-op radiograph after 3 years of follow-up. Now, management of the sequelae or type 4. In type 4, if it is a type 4A and the age is less than 6 years, we have to go for modified Harman's procedure if cartilage remnant over the medial neck is present. In Choi type 4B, if the age is less than 6 years, we have to go for trochanteric arthroplasty. And in Choi type 4A and B, if it age is more than 6 years, we have to go for Elizarov hip reconstruction. I am just showing you the example of EHG sequelae. This is Choi type 4A. Here you can see a small amount of the cartilage are present inside the acetabulum. To achieve neck length in these sequelae, we have to do Harman's procedure. What is Harman's procedure? It is a bifurcation of the proximal femur. We have to make a Y-shaped proximal femur by splitting the proximal femur, and graft is put in between these two, either by iliac crest or by fibular graft. Okay, and a neck length can be achieved to achieve a good reduction at the hip joint. This is the follow-up of the same patient roughly after 7 years. You can see the hip is quite stable and the neck has been gained. In Choi type 4B, if the age of the patient is less than 6 years, we can go for trochanteric arthroplasty. What is trochanteric arthroplasty? In trochanteric arthroplasty, the trochanter is put inside the acetabulum, and it is expected that this trochanter will take a shape of head of the femur. So what we do a subtrochanteric osteotomy, a varus osteotomy at the subtrochanteric level, and the greater trochanter is put inside the acetabulum, and abductors are transferred distally. As this greater trochanter is very large, so it is supplemented by the pelvic osteotomy to cover the greater trochanter. But the complication rate of this procedure is relatively very high. Now in Choi type 4, A and B, if the age of the patient is more than 6 years, we have to go for Elizarov hip reconstruction. What is Elizarov reconstruction? It is a dual osteotomy. First osteotomy is done in the upper femur. The aim of this osteotomy is to create a band at the ankle that stabilizes the connection between the femur and the pelvis. And the second osteotomy is done at the distal femur. The aim of the second osteotomy is to restore orientation of the knee and the ankle. And this osteotomy can also solve the purpose of femoral lengthening. So by this procedure, the limb length has improved and the lurch is decreased. As you can see, this was the having Choi type 4. A proximal femur osteotomy was done to achieve a support at the pelvis, and the second osteotomy was done to gain a normal alignment of the knee joint. And this is the follow-up. So the take-home message for the postgraduate is that you are very likely to get a long case of septic arteries of the sequelae in your exam. And when you are suspecting a case, that sequelae infection is very commonly seen. Classification is based upon the radiograph. You are expected to elicit a past history of infection. A thorough examination of the hip and the thigh is must. Examination of other joints, including the contralateral hip and the ipsilateral knee, has to be done. Limb length has to be measured. Segmental limb length measurement is very important because multiple Pfizer involvement is commonly seen. Telescopy and Trendelenburg test are very important to elicit because this tells about whether the hip is stable or unstable. Thank you.
Fantastic lecture, Dr. Sumit.
Yeah,
Very clear and
very informative and clear. Thanks.
thank you. Thanks a lot. All of us learned many things.
Really, sir. Absolutely.
And collection of cases, that is very important. Every type you have got, good collection of cases and with result. Fantastic, really. Appreciate it.
For me, the understanding of classification was the easiest today. Never understood this classification. Even while checking theory copy, I had to refer to the book before checking the copies.
Should I show videos or should I?
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
videos.
Just hold a second.
You stop sharing the screen first and
Yes, sir,
then
yes, sir, yes, sir.
open your videos on your desktop and then start sharing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any questions from the students?
Sir, not yet, sir.
Because the talk was so clear, sir, crystal clear.
Yeah, everything covered. There.
There should, because especially the Cho classification, the one of the best I had these times,
So
recent
can,
past.
can you see the video, sir?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So this is the video of a patient who was having a septic process involving the hip and the knee. You can see she is walking with a limp on the right side, shoulder and the pelvis are tilting on the right side. When you can see from the back, when she walks, there is compensatory scoliosis and she is walking with the equinus because of severe shortening involving the hip and the knee. So this type of gait can be seen in septic arthritis. And the another thing is, so this is the telescopy, how to elicit telescopy. I think all postgraduates must be knowing how to check for the telescopy. And this is the another gate video. Can you see video or not, sir?
No.
No.
You share the screen and then open the video, sir.
Okay, the second video was basically gait abnormality also, in which there is very mild gait abnormality, which is very difficult to see gait abnormality. So message was basically gait abnormality can be very mild or very severe. It can be just a mild lurch or can be severe lurch. So any questions, sir?
I think Gopakumar sir, Karlar sir, the senior most people, because we people are very, very weak in this pediatric group.
and usually we refer to the pediatric surgeon.
Yes. I think
Pediatric ortho, we refer the cases nowadays.
Jagdish can also comment because Jagdish is also doing some job in the pediatric group.
Jagdish has to unmute himself.
Jagdish, you are, yeah.
I'll leave it to Gopmar, sir.
Yes. Gopa sir is the best person to comment on anything to add on for the juniors.
It was a great talk, and he has explained the classification very well. The classification is based on which part of the head is affected, like the epiphysis, whether the epiphysis is gone, whether the physis is gone, or the metaphysis is gone, or all of them is gone. So the classification was very well established. And second thing is, he has shown X-rays of each of these groups. I just wanted to ask one thing. At the age of 6 years, you said above the age of 6 years, you need to do the Elisaro reconstruction. But
Yes,
if
sir.
you do it at an younger age group, will that valgus will remodel itself and cause problems?
Sir, what happens that in Choi type 4B seculae, so
Yeah.
the treatment described is the Elisaro reconstruction, that is proximal femoral osteotomy and limb lengthening. So if you do it a younger age group, the proximal femoral osteotomy that we do to support the pelvis, it is a tendency to remodel. And when it's remodel, it is very difficult to that how much length you have to gain, because you have to achieve first a support at the proximal side, then you can assess that how much lengthening has to be done. If the proximal side has been remodeled, it is very difficult to assess that how much length has to be done. So it has to be done at the age of, Choi described it as after 6 years, but most of the authors say it has to be done after 10 to 11 years.
10 to 11 years.
Yeah, usually prefer after the adolescence first.
Yeah, after the trials. But Choi told that at the age of 6 years, that is why I have quoted the reference of the Choi, that is 6 years of age.
But I think most of the Elizabeth surgeons, because they take this like 10 to 12 years.
Yes, sir. In most of the others describe after 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
And again, Colonna was a procedure which was abandoned by many, but now it is coming up in a large way in the management.
Yeah, sir. Sir, even in the best literatures, there are hardly 2 to 3 cases we have described the coroner's results of the coroner process. But we have a series of roughly 13 to 15 patients with a follow-up of more than 5 to 7 years, even 10 to 12 years of the Harman's procedure, and the results were quite good.
What about Colonna? What about the range of movement in Colonna? Many people.
Range of motion is, sir, the main thing is to assess the outcome of these septic sequelae. It doesn't have any criteria. So even if you follow the criteria like Harris-Webb score, the outcome is very good. But in most of the patient, our aim is the proximal femoral should be strong enough so that the further reconstructive procedure can be done. If you leave them as such, the bone stock is very less, so the further reconstructive procedure becomes very challenging.
Okay.
Yes, Kalra sir.
Yes, sir. I just want to comment. See, this is one of the unit in our hospital who is doing exclusively this work. And to be honest, nobody likes to touch these cases in our hospital. These are so difficult, I tell you, and unrewarding in the hands of a surgeon, because it is not like a total hip or ACL reconstruction, which everybody wants to do it. It has a follow of 15 years, I tell you, in our hospital, maybe more than that, in each case, I tell you. And multiple surgeries right from the outset have been done. And very difficult to understand at what time, what to do. And they are mostly patients from the villages, slums, very bad gait, shortening, and lengthening procedures. You know how much time they require. They land up in some complication, then again redo the same things. It's a very, very commendable work. That is what I want to tell you. And this has been, all his work is Dr. Kanodia, who has been doing for last 30 years this work. And he's a meticulous record, I tell you. That's what I want to comment. And you will not get such kind of x-rays, such kind of work. And believe me, I have never seen in India. I'm not praising Lady Hardinge just because I am in. I have traveled all over India and I've seen a lot of places. This kind of pediatric orthopedics and number of quality of clinical cases you will not get in India.
And everything was explained with the examples of X-ray. That was very nice.
Partha sir.
This is a tip of the iceberg, I tell you. There's a lot to it. Because it was a small postgraduate lecture, he has categorized into that. But otherwise, they have a lot of publications in JPJS, clinical orthopedics like this.
Partha sir.
Sir, I think it was a really fantastic exposition. Something which I have not seen for a very long time, all these cases. And really a very thankless job. And the students and all of us have learned a lot of things today.
Yeah.
And things have been made quite simple for the postgraduates also. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Mohanty sir.
Yeah, I already wrote my comments.
In between, he was writing it.
Yeah, even before the lecture is completed, sir was writing.
Yeah, after the classification was complete, that time I started writing. But all the, we got to see that all the complete and all the X-rays of different types of classification and each example. And it's a good postgraduate lectures that are
Yes.
complicated, straightforward, with the example in each. That is the beauty of this lecture. Thanks,
Yeah.
Smith, for an excellent, and we also convey our thank to Dr. Kanoja, who has done a lot of work and which helps us and postgraduates as well. Thank you.
Sumit, one basic question from one of the student.
Yes,
He
sir.
says that this means this is the sequelae of Tom Smith arthritis.
Yeah. Secular Tom Smith arthritis.
Shivananda sir. Unmute.
Now, Shivananda sir might be preparing a mnemonic for Sumit.
Sir, you will prepare a mnemonic and Sumit name, sir.
Sumit sir, one more
Kanoja.
question to you, sir. Any
Yes,
age
sir.
limit to call it as a Tom Smith arthritis, sir?
So basically, Tom Smith arthritis is an infection of infancy only. So
Tom Smith arthritis, if it is below 1 year, then only it calls the below 1 year is the class, terminology for the Tom Smith. Am I correct with?
yes, yes, sir.
Whatever septic arthritis below 1 year, we call it as
Tom Smith arthritis.
Shivananda sir, your comments.
No, it's not necessarily that head and neck will be completely. Usually, head and neck is completely absorbed.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it depends upon, you have to follow the patient, because you cannot immediately label him as sequelae. You have to follow the patient for 2 to 3 years or 4 years. Then only you can label him sequelae.
Correct.
Sequelae.
Sir, excellent talk, sir. Sumit, sir. This is actually very good and very informative for us.
Thank you,
sir. Jagdish sir, Uday Kumar sir, and Samantha sir, one by one.
Yes.
Samantha sir.
Samantha sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because I was listening like a student. I'm frankly speaking.
Yes.
So
everyone of us.
Because I don't do any pediatric job. I don't do any pediatric. My pediatric activity is zero. So whatever I was listening, I was just refreshing my PG days. Whatever I have read, probably me and Subhrangshu together. Subhrangshu might be doing. Subhrangshu is also not doing pediatric anything.
No pediatric.
Me and Subhrangshu are just recapitulating our PG days in our medical college.
Jagdish sir.
I enjoyed Dr. Sumit's lecture. It was very, very kept simple to postgraduate level. I would just add that sometimes diagnosing a post-septic sequelae is not very difficult. Even sometimes if you don't get the history, one look at the child's hip and all with the scars and all, they can never be another second diagnosis. But I believe what the postgraduate should not do is stop at saying post-septic sequelae. Remember that septic arthritis can lead to a normal hip and to a totally disorganized joint failure. There is a whole spectrum. The postgraduate should try to add something to this post-septic sequelae of the hip. He could say, for example, there is a pathological dislocation, or there is a hypermobile hip, or coxa vara, possible coxa vara, post-septic sequelae.
That was the message I want to tell the postgraduates, that they have to label whether it is stable or unstable. They don't directly label that it is sequelae septic. They just have to label it is stable or unstable. Then differentiate that it can be sequelae. It can be anything else also.
Yeah.
Sir,
it's usually a sitter. Maybe a proximal femoral focal deficiency.
Agreed.
That is one thing. But that this diagnosis management becomes, for the treating surgeon, is extremely complex, because the management will span about 5 to 7 years anyway. And I think Dr. Sumit put it beautifully. The thing is to wait till the cartilage ossifies, and you find sometimes an arthrogram will help you to tell you whether what is remaining there. Is it a neck remnant or a head remnant? All those little. So though the diagnosis may be simple, the management is extremely well complex. Great set of X-rays, Dr. Sumit. Great set of X-rays, good follow-up. And the postgraduate must know the CHOI. I think they must know. A PG must know what the CHOI, or at least the CHOI and the HANCA, I think, must be known.
Dr. Sumit, you have already answered this question, but again, students wants to know, if anyone having history of hip infection after 1 year of age with some deformity, can we call it as a sequelae?
Infection appears after 1 year of age with some deformity.
With some deformity.
See, you can clinically, I'm just telling you, clinically they have to tell whether it is stable hair or unstable hair. So if you have to make a diagnosis that this patient is having stable hair or unstable hair, sequelae has to be classified radiologically only.
Okay.
You can say that this diagnosis can be because of infective etiology of the hip joint. At the age when it is presenting the patient, he may or may not develop as a sequelae.
Okay, sir.
But there is one more thing that mostly PG confuse between that when to label it as a TB hip or when to label it as a pyogenic hip. It is very confusing question for the postgraduates that I have also seen even over institute that PG confused that whether it is TB hip or whether it is septic hip. So the very differentiating feature is in TB hip, the pain is the classical feature. But in sequelae septic arthritis, pain is usually very late feature. In most of the patients, the presenting complaint is painless limb. Okay. Or similarly, in the TB hip, there is a classical set of deformity like flexion, abduction, external rotation, and flexion, adduction, and interrotation deformities. These classical set of deformities is usually not seen in sequelae. There can be either coxa vara or coxa valga.
Yes, even the primary history, if you take up the history for the septic hip sequelae, the history is different from the TB.
Yeah, history is different, yeah.
From the history itself, it is totally different.
Yeah, sometimes you see the flexion, adduction, and interrotation deformity, and PG make a diagnosis that this patient is having sequelae septic arthritis hip.
Because the attitude in TB starts differently, attitude in TB starts differently.
Yes,
there are two different attitudes in both the diseases.
Yes, sir.
But Sumit, you are just refreshing my ideas, my PG days. I could recollect some of my PG reading days.
Always, Ajay told in the hip examination, clinical diagnosis you have to give, synovitis, arthritis, unstable hip, coxa vara, protrusio. These are the clinical diagnoses. Then you give the etiological diagnosis, whatever post-septic sequelae or whatever later on. So clinical diagnosis has to be like this, on this basis, findings.
Uday Kumar, sir.
First of all, congratulations to Sumit for an excellent presentation and excellent collection. That is, I have never seen, because that is given an example for each classification. It's fantastic. And our regards to, on behalf of the faculty and students, our regards to R.K. Kanoja sir also. And then, though I'm a general orthopedic surgeon, I'm very fond of this pediatric orthopedics. In fact, I registered for this IFICS also. I'm watching that webinars, online conference also. And really, we had two cases. One case, though we did immediate arthrotomy and then put a K-wire, transfixing K-wire. Those days, we did a thorough arthrotomy, but we could not prevent the sequelae. That almost the head has become like a head of the fibula. So there, later we wanted to try that pelvic supporting osteotomy that we used to call Lorentz osteotomy in those days. I don't know, this development was not there. Maybe it's almost 15-20 years back. And recently also 3 years back, we have seen one case. Luckily, we could save that hip. Luckily, we did a thorough arthrotomy and did a good lavage and put again transfixing pin. Luckily, we could save that. These are two of my experiences, sir. Once again, hearty congratulations and thank you for the excellent talk, sir. Thank you.
Kanoja, sir.
Hey, fantastic talk. One thing I have learned that because we are referring cases to the pediatricians, that we can explain to the patient what mostly pediatric is going to do it. Another question is that to see the immature head or cartilaginous portion, arthrography, and does MRI has got any role?
Sumit, Dr. Sumit.
Dr. Sumit.
Sir, we usually don't go for MRI because first thing is most of the patients, they develop infection in infancy, and to get an MRI, most of the patient has to go for sedation. But itself is a procedure. So we have to give sedation. It is better to go for arthrography and do definitive surgery at that time only. Because arthrography can be done at the time of definitive surgery.
Very nice. These lectures tell us, like general orthopedic, what pediatric surgeons can do it, and we can refer and tell the patients also in the beginning that what are going to be there and what are that